Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to my channel. Today in this video we are going to start another major anatomical area of the human body, that is the thorax. And in this video we will be introducing the thorax. So what is the thorax and how we will be covering the thorax? We know thorax is the part of the trunk. This is the whole body trunk, and the trunk is divided into the upper part and the lower part. Upper is the thorax and the lower is the abdominal part. The upper part and the lower parts are separated from one another with the help of the diaphragm. So we will be covering the thorax within the upcoming days, so keep watching this channel for covering your thorax. How we will be covering the thorax? For the thorax we will be covering the bones first. Bones of the thorax will be covered first, then we will be covering the muscles of the thorax, areas of the thorax, and then the organs of the thorax. Within the bones of the thorax it includes the sternum and various ribs. One of the sternum is there, and the thoracic vertebrae, and the muscles of the thorax like intercostal muscles are there, etc. Areas of thorax, various areas of the thorax, such as the superior mediastinum, inferior mediastinum, etc. And the organs of the thorax, such as the vital organs, lungs, heart, viscera, etc. So keep watching this channel more and more, and share if you want to cover these topics with me. Firstly, we would be talking about the skeleton of the thorax. So in this video we are just introducing what we are up to within the next days. The shape of the thorax, and the superior aperture and the inferior aperture. What the shape of the thorax? We know the shape of the thorax is it has a truncated shape. You can see it's narrow above, whereas it's the broader below, and hence this type of shape is called as a truncated shape. And within the adults it's oval shaped, it's all in shaped. And the shape of the thorax, within the ribs also move up and downward when there is the processes of the inspiration and the expiration, and hence this whole process is called as the thoracic respiration. And within the thoracic respiration, this whole skeleton of the thorax is muchly of the greatest importance, as the costal cartilages and the ribs allow the movements for this thoracic cage. And then there is the superior aperture. The for the superior aperture is also called as the, this is the superior aperture, and the superior aperture is also called as the inlet of the thorax. And next we have the superior aperture. The superior aperture, you can see the superior aperture here. Superior aperture is also called as the inlet of the thorax. It's called the inlet of the thorax, and it is the part of the thorax which is continuous with the root of the neck. And you can see the two diameters here. This is the anterior-posterior diameter, and this diameter is the transverse diameter. You can see the transverse diameter is greater than the anterior-posterior diameter. In addition, this transverse diameter is 10 centimeters long, whereas it is half of this diameter, that is the 5 centimeter. Then we have the inferior aperture. You can see inferior aperture. Inferior aperture is called as the outlet of the thorax, and this outlet of the thorax is separated from the abdominal cavity with the help of the diaphragm. And this diaphragm begins. If we see the margins of this diaphragm, you can see the costal margins here. You can see costal margins. What are the costal margins? The costal margins are formed by the boundaries of the costal cartilages. Which costal cartilages? Costal cartilage of 7, 8, 9, and the 10. These costal cartilages of the lower three ribs is called as the costal margins, and hence this costal margin also serves as the boundary for the diaphragm. And if we see it posteriorly, it is formed by the 12th thoracic vertebra, and on the sides there are the costal margins, whereas anteriorly it's the 10th rib with its costal cartilage. And next we will be talking about which structures pass the diaphragm. So now let's move further. Firstly, we have the superior aperture. We have seen the superior aperture. The superior aperture is the inlet of the thorax, and from here this superior aperture is continuous with the root of the neck. And if it's continuous with the root of the neck, it must be separated from the root of the neck, and hence it's separated from the root of the neck with the help of the substance fascia. So what is the substance fascia? Substance fascia is also called as a suprapleural membrane, and if we see the extensions of the suprapleural membrane, it is extending from the C7 vertebrae, and C7 vertebrae, its transverse process of the C7 vertebrae is included. We can see it's the apex of the suprapleural membrane, whereas at its base it is being attached with the first rib along with its costal cartilage, and hence this is the substance fascia. Substance fascia divides the inlet of the thorax into two parts, that is the right part and the left part, and we can see there is a cleft in between, and these right and the left parts are covered with the substance fascia. In addition, what is the substance fascia? We can see the substance fascia is musculotendinous part. It means it is somewhat muscular and also the tendinous, and it is actually the tendon of the scalenus minimus muscle, along with the scalenus minimus muscle and the endothoracic fascia. And if we see the superior, here the superior part of the we have the substance fascia, and if I draw, this is C7 and it's the transverse process, and if I draw here the substance fascia, so this is, and I call this the superior surface of the substance fascia, and this is the inferior surface of the substance fascia. The superior surface of the substance fascia is in close relation with the subclavian vessel. This is the subclavian vessel and the subclavian artery and the veins, and below its inferior surface lies the cervical pleura, and inferior to the cervical pleura is the apex of the lungs. So you must keep this mind that the superior surface of the substance fascia is in close contact with the subclavian vessels, whereas its inferior surface is in close relation with the cervical pleura, and below which lies the apex of the lungs. So that were the superior aperture, which is being covered with the substance fascia. So different structures, and one thing we must note here, this is the superior aperture. This pathway is the inlet of the thorax, or it's the superior aperture, and this is the as we move downward comes a outlet of the thorax. So firstly there is the superior aperture. We can see the superior aperture. So what are the contents, what are the boundaries of the superior aperture anteriorly and posteriorly? Anteriorly we can see it's the sternum, and above the sternum there is the manubrium, and the superior aperture is being enclosed by the superior surface of the manubrium. In addition, at the posterior boundary we have the superior surface of the T1 vertebra, and we can also see the anterior boundary is at a lower level than the posterior boundary, and this anterior boundary lies at a lower level at an angle at a distance of 3.5 centimeters from the posterior boundary. You can see it's at a lower level than this, and this distance is the 3.5 centimeter, and there is also an inclination, and there is inclination of the 45-degree, and their various contents pass from this inlet, such as the subclavian artery and the vein on the both sides, and also the esophagus and the trachea. Trachea is palpated here within the jugular notch, and the brachial plexus here, and various contents such as the, if you mark there lies the apex of the lungs, then comes the trachea, esophagus is there, and various vessels such as the brachiocephalic remains. And you must know that within the superior aperture three muscles lie, three muscles. And what are those muscles? That is the sternothyroid muscle and the longus colli muscle. Here lies the longus longus colli muscle. So you must know that three muscles lie within the superior aperture of the inlet of the thorax. So now let's move further. Moving further, we have the inferior aperture, and we have talked this inferior aperture is separated from the thoracic cavity with the help of the diaphragm. And also, if we talk about the boundaries of the inferior aperture, we can see anteriorly it's enclosed by the, this is the infrasternal angle, and the infrasternal angle is between the costal cartilages. And if we see posteriorly, it's the body of the 12th, this is the body of the 12th thoracic vertebra, and on each sides we have the costal margin, and hence it's the inferior aperture. This inferior aperture is being covered with the diaphragm. So what's the diaphragm? Actually, this diaphragm is the musculotendinous structure which separates the thorax from the trunk. Thorax from the abdomen. And various structures pass through this diaphragm, and this diaphragm has three large openings. You can see three large openings here. Uh, this opening is at the level of the T8 vertebra, and then it's at the level of the esophageal opening is at the T10 T10 level, and this level is at the T12 is at the level of the T12. And various structures pass from these openings, such as from the vena cava opening. There passes the inferior vena cava and the right phrenic nerve and the lymphatic of the liver. Then we have the esophageal opening. From the esophagus passes both the vagus trunks, including the left gastric vessels. And next we have the aortic, which is at the level of the T12, and here the aorta lies and it's been passing here, and then there are the thoracic ducts and the ischias vein. So that was the brief intro of the thorax. So next we will be covering thorax, the bones of the thorax and the muscles of the thorax. So keep watching this channel for more such videos. Allah Hafiz.